Hello and welcome to another tutorial. This time around we're actually going to go through some of the additional features that we have added to the editor. One of the first things when working with Iron Fury is that we wanted to make the effect system very robust and have a lot of stuff that we could do. For example, in Duke Nukem 3D, you usually had an effect that did a very specific task, be it an earthquake or something similar, and you usually set the value, that was the effect number, and then a linking tag. And that was pretty much it. Everything else was hard coded, all the heights, all the sloping, and everything. But in Ion Fury, we decided to take a little bit different approach and actually have a lot of stuff that you could do. The problem is that normally you only have two tags that you can use, which is the low tag and the high tag. The problem with this approach is that while you can do quite a lot of stuff with these two, um, you kind of run out very easily when you start working. So you can tell that the developers already faced this issue when they started adding like music sprites and speed sprites and other things just to support a simple thing as a door. There is also another tag that exists that the developers were allowed to mess with, and that's called the extra. The extra is also very useful. For example, when you insert a speed sprite to a door, it actually becomes extra during the map load. The problem with extra is that anything you set the extra to be in the map editor, that actually gets reset completely during map load. So we basically have two tags that we can work with. In Ion Fury, we actually need a lot more tags. So what we actually did is that during map load, we reset the extra and read it to memory. But we also use other tags such as y velocity, x velocity, and z velocity. And there's also a tag called owner. These are all part of internal structures that belong to sprites. As you can probably guess, the velocities are meant to say what's the current velocity of a enemy, NPC, bullet projectile, anything. And owner was supposed to tell who does it belong to. Now that we have additional tags to work with, we also use another one that was added for blending with transparent sprites, and that's called just blend in general. So that gives us actually quite a bit more tags to work with. So we actually have high tag, low tag, we have extra, y velocity, x velocity, z velocity, owner, and blend. The only problem is that with low tag and high tag, you can easily press Alt T and you have a list. And let's say we do 69, which is wall panning. And then we can do a high tag, which is 5. But all of a sudden, we run into a problem. We want to actually have the other values inserted as well. As you can see, there's x velocity, z velocity, and extra, and also palette that we use to do different things such as flags, pan, floor, ceiling, disable, so on. It's usually utilized for different behavioral flags. So one of the hotkeys you can use is, aside from Alt T and H, which is for high tag and low tag, we also added something for X, Y velocities, and then for Z you have to use D. This is because we started running out of keys. And then for owner, you have W. And for blend, you have Alt Q. So with these buttons, we can actually completely control what we want to do with those tags. Normally you would have to press F8, and from here you'd have to punch in X velocity 44, 55, and let's do like 4 here. But we actually added that you can do Alt X, you can do Alt Y, you can do Alt D for the Z, and then you also have the owner and blend. So for example, if I do transparent for this sprite, you can easily see on the top right, if I do blend 255, which is additive, it turns into a different blend mode. But in some cases, we also use blend as a tag for specific effects, such as respawn sprites. There is also available Alt-M, which is for the extra, and that is something that was always possible, but since it gets reset on map load, it was never utilized before. So let's say we do something even more complicated, which is 100 skybox. From here, you can actually see that Z velocity, if we set it to 1, we have a different flag here, and the palette is a different flag. Unfortunately for palette, you will have to use the 3D mode. So for example, top right, and then give it a palette, which is 5, and then we have enable skybox rendering if this is a feature. So let's say you have a sector effector, and you wish to, you have a, let's say, you could actually do something like explosion sprites. So let's do an explosion sprite, 1, 2, 4, 7, and at this point we have high tag, let's put 55, and we have delay in text, which is low tag, and here we can put 2. But the problem is that if you want to increase the delay, then you'd have to do Alt-T again, and again, change the values, and this becomes really tedious. So what was added is that you can clone, and if you press Alt and numpad plus, it will actually increase or decrement the low tag by 1. If you hold Shift, this will increase or decrease extra, numpad plus and minus, that is. And the same thing, if you hold Control, it will work for high tag. Something that is really useful also, if you all of a sudden need to change the high tag of all the sprites here, you just select them with Shift, right Shift in this case, press Alt H, and it will tell you that you have a million sprites, but don't worry about it, that's just a glitch. So we can set it to 45, and now all the sprites have their low tag changed to 45. If I want to set the extra, the same thing applies. Here I can put 88, and now the extra is 88 for all those sprites. You no longer have to go sprite by sprite when working with it. This also works for owner and also works for blend, so I can set all these to be 255, and when I do transparency, you can see that the blend is 255. Or just to demonstrate, I'll set the blend to be screen, which is 129, and you can see that the behavior already changed for the sprite itself. In 2D mode, you also have Control-Alt-Shift. In a high resolution, you can see the whole thing, but over here you can see the sector tags and sector effector lists, which can help you. Over here, if you press Control-Alt-Shift and if you press I, you get a special menu. This is a little bit complicated, and I'll show you later how to work with it. But for example, there's a feature called RTX on, which is kind of a useless feature for most of players. But with this, you can actually see the visibility in terms of 2D mode. So if I go under here, start moving around, you can kind of see what the visibility is going to be in 2D mode, which can be quite a bit helpful when working with sector over sector stuff. But keep in mind that this only takes the current level you're at. So if I start moving higher, you can see that the visibility changes quite a bit. So it isn't a complete tool to know which is where. But for example, one very useful feature, if we want to pretend that we place a light here, and I want to start creating, I go to where the light is, and Control-Alt-Shift-I, I can do drop a light, do it again, and again, it's a little bit buggy. And if I press Shift, the left Shift, it will show me the light. So this way I can, for example, decide, okay, this one needs a light, and every time I hold Shift, it will show me like where the light is supposed to be. So I can, for example, do this, this, and this, and if I were actually doing a light, then I could easily kind of see where the light would cast and create like a shaft based on that. It's a useful tool for making light shafts. something I'm going to show now is the, let's see, final map. And if we do, for example, here, and let's say I want to change all armor shots to explosion sprites, then we have something called for all selected sprite or for all sprites. So for all sprites, if picknum matches my number, I first have to remember what the shot, it's 228. So for all sprites, where the picknum matches 228, and then we can narrow down, and the low tag matches, high tag matches, extra matches. This is, for example, very useful if you have loads of, let's say, explosion sprites, and you all of a sudden need to change the high tag on the map, and so you just specify 1247, which is the pick number for explosion, and then you specify what you want to change it to and narrow down. And so for all sprites with picknum 228, with picknum 228 set, let's say picknum, and we want to change it to 1. So all the armor shards in the map are now sector effector sprites. Of course, that's not going to do much for you because they're not linked to any effect, but it's very useful if you need to do bulk changes all of a sudden. And let's see. There's also, if you hold shift, there's the angle that you see close to the arrow. In this case, it's 1, 2, 2, 3, and turn. So these are showing you the angles for the next wall turn. If I press 7, this will toggle the angle mode to show you the build units instead, which is a little bit different, so it doesn't convert between degrees. And also, if you hold shift, you will see the solid line is pointing to the wall itself. So wall 10403 is what the solid line is pointing at, and the next wall is what the dotted line is pointing at. So if I were to use a wall point dragger, it would affect the solid line, which would be this wall point here. And if I was to point it to 10403 wall, that is. It's a useful way to tell what you're pointing at. And of course, if you use the other side of the wall, it will show you a different value. All the red lines are actually two-sided. And then there's the object integrator, and let me show you how that works. So we're gonna do, see, maps, packs, and cars. Let's see, we get a really nice car, and I'm gonna take this one, and I wanna insert it to another level. So you copy it, and then you open another map. The only problem with opening another map is that it will not match like you want it to. So if I do that to A3, let's do the next map, A4. Let's decide, okay, we got a kick-ass car, want it inside a mall. As long as I find the car, that is. Lost it. Didn't copy over. All right, let's try again. This car. Final maps. 4. It's somewhere. Probably. Oh yeah, I'm out of walls. That's why. That's why it's not gonna work. This map doesn't actually. Yeah, this map ran out of walls, so that's why. All right, let's try another map. So cars. Final maps. Let's do. It worked in A3 when I tested. Here. Yes. And I want to drag it here. The only problem with dragging cars around is that when you put them somewhere, you can see that the height is not going to match. So for example, I'm just going to clone this car one time because I'm going to use it later. But what I've actually added to the editor is called object integrator. So you take the sector and press Control Alt Shift and W, and first point at the ground where the object is. So this is the object to integrate, so pick 2, and Control Shift W and get values for room. And when you go over here and Control Shift I, object integrator, and we want to integrate ground object and flatten ceiling. And now when we let go, you can look at it, and the ground object is practically integrated. As we join and join, the object is perfectly transformed to its surroundings. The sky is parallax and matches what the neighboring ceiling would be. This is very handy if you, for example, decide, okay, I want a car, all of a sudden I decide that I definitely want it under there. We're just going to make it just a tiny bit smaller, so it's going to fit there. I'm going to take this one. Let's see, put it here. And yes, you can see that it's gonna kind of destroy the area over here if I leave it here. So I'm gonna take it, Control Shift W, and I'm gonna get it the object to integrate first, and then the room which is nearby. And if I do Control Shift I run the integrator and ground objects, and if I let go, it's gonna be like this. And then just join the surrounding to the object itself, and there we go, are perfectly integrated inside. This also works for ceiling objects if you want to use it. And once you have it like this, you only need to adjust the shading to be a little bit darker, like this, and yeah, you'll need to adjust the size manually, but just to give you an idea how this works. Also, there's template maps. Let's see, packs I left here. Suit template. Yeah, this is what I use. So over here you can also use the integrator. So there's other guys on how to use it and make it think about 50% inside, and this was kind of intended for level designers, so you have a surrounding here, or you can use this A or B surrounding when we were making this. So I'm just gonna grab the stuff here, and there we go. I'm just gonna I think the build of the editor I still have is slightly corrupted, so let me restart it. Let's try again. Maps, packs, and suit template. Just gonna there. And now when I take this one away, there's the touch plate plus I want to copy. I can take this, and let's say when I integrated it to another map. So let's see what map would have space. Well, this one did, so let's just recycle it. There's the suit template, and we need to integrate it somewhere. level is extremely busy, so I'll try to find a spot where I can actually create it. Let's rotate it around a little bit. I'll just put it here. I'll just make a tiny opening for it. So let's see. Move the block wall there, and it's a little bit on the fly right now. So we just move it here so this aligns with the wall, and get an opening here. There we go. As you can see, the problem is that it's not really gonna fit well there because it's like way below inside the ground somewhere, and if I look, it's like up there somewhere where the actual play area is. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna take this area here. I'm gonna take the reference from the floor again, Control-Shift-W, and object to integrate, and Control-Shift-W the area here. And if I do the integrator again and ground object, if everything went well, it will synchronize. Unfortunately, it won't always work because there are some bugs in the code. But theory, let's see. Oh yeah, because I should use the different mode. Completely forgot. So there's a option to move selection as a whole. So I'll just use that. So Control-Shift-W, I'm gonna get the values for object to integrate again, and value for the room, and run the integrator, and then there's the move selection as a whole, floor as a reference, so number 4, and there we go. It will move as a whole, but sometimes the Z adjustment is a little bit flaky, so sometimes it works flawlessly and sometimes it doesn't. But this is a way to kind of make it move the selection as a whole, because you need to move the sprites and the sector at the same time. But that's a way to use the object integrator. It works like, I would say, 80 to 90% of the time. Just got unlucky there. So let's start with the 3D mode stuff. For 3D mode, we added quite a bit of useful features. So there's a feature to disable pretty much everything that you see. So if I press, I think, yeah, there's skill preview. This is skill preview, and this corresponds to the US layout. So let's say I want no enemies visible. I'll just take the first map of the first level, and here it should be a little bit easier to see. So right now we're previewing easy, and you can always see on the top left what's going on in terms of preview. So as I keep adding and adding, you can see that the enemies appear and disappear. So none is that it tries to emulate nothing. In case some enemy has been tagged not to appear on hardcore, then it should appear here as well. So easy, medium, hard, and hardcore. It seems that in this case, hardcore doesn't really have much of a difference to hard in this particular area. If I press shift, it will hide effectors. So shift. This is really useful if you want to do screenshots or just get around. As you can see, it can get really messy if you have effectors everywhere. And for example, this area here, and you kind of want to see through and get a screenshot for your friends or something. If you press shift and slash, it will just hide them all. It makes it a little bit easier to see around. Also, let's see, yeah. If you press star, it'll hide all shadows and gradients. So as you can see, it might get a little bit annoying sometimes when you want to work around and you have these gradients and stuff. While it looks cool, it can sometimes be a little bit annoying, especially when you have lights that are kind of going on and off, and it makes it kind of difficult to work what's going on sometimes. So here, for example, if you want to target the sprites in the back instead of the gradient, because the gradient doesn't really let anything through once you have it enabled. So with this you can enable and disable gradients, make it a little bit easier. And of course you see on the top left, wherever you have enabled, disabled, so it makes it a little bit easier so you don't forget. One useful feature is that whenever you insert sprites, it might be a default size. Let's say, I have to do marks loaded here, but let's say insert something like this. It's a stupid example, it's a box over. Let's use the trash bag as an example. So you have a trash bag, and you don't know what sprite size it's supposed to be, so when you press slash, then you can set the sprite to a default size. And this default size is 64 by 64. But if you press shift and slash, control and slash, then it will put it 32 by 32. But if you press shift and control, then it goes to 16 by 16. So this way you can really easily do like an auto size on the sprite that might work for the sprite size. For example, if you don't know what a sprite is supposed to be, like a hole here, when you first do it, you can probably like press slash and it will give you like some kind of idea of what the dimensions are, the native dimensions for the hole, and then press shift and control, and it gets smaller and smaller, so you can always get like a nice even ratio going on. 64 by 64 is usually the default size that the game has, and in theory, control and slash is pretty useful. There's also a way, normally you have maybe white panning set like this, so you can actually press tab and you can press shift and U, which should paste white panning. I think, yeah, control and U, and will paste the white panning, so you can easily correct walls most of the time when it works. This way you can easily copy paste, because if you try, you might have a wall here, and if you try to paste it, then the X repeating will always be the same, and you can see this pattern, this pattern, this pattern is always here. And you can always use the auto align, but sometimes the white padding helps quite a bit when you don't want to apply everything. There's also a way to paste the picknum, which is the texture number. So in case, let's say, you decide, okay, I'm gonna go around and I want to switch the floor tiles all to be like this. So you can just select it to your clipboard and press Ctrl and W and just roll your mouse around, and you can easily replace the texture only without affecting the shading or palette. And this makes it extremely easy to do quick changes in case you're not satisfied with some of the texture choices you've done. There we go. And the same also applies to palette. Let's say over here we decide, okay, maybe this 46, I want to change the color here a little bit, so you select it to your clipboard and then Alt-Y, and Alt-Y will paste whatever you have in the clipboard into the texture itself. And this way you can easily also do palette swapping if you ever feel like it, that, hey, I didn't like the original color and I want to redo it. In this case, the lights are not going to do it because it's a little bit designed around a certain palette, but you get the idea. And you can also use, let's say I have this corpse here, you can use Ctrl D to duplicate the sprite. It will be in the exact same spot, but if you drag the sprite away, you'll see that it actually did duplicate the sprite. So you can really easily create, let's say I want to create an amazing stack of these. Just move these around a little bit, and you can easily create a stack barrels. You can move around. There you go. You have a stack of barrels, or barrels, but garbage cans. Beautiful, but get the idea here. And there's also a way to paste the slope. So let's say I have something like this, and I decide, okay, I want this sloping, and then you just take the slope to a clipboard and press Shift Y on the ground, and it will automatically paste the slope. It doesn't matter where you're pointing, it will always paste the slope value. Keep in mind that this is only the slope value, so it's not gonna take the direction or anything. So if you need the direction, then you just mess around with the first wall, which is Alt F. But that's part of the usual mapping. And there's also a way, if you do a slope, there's a possibility to press Shift W to flip the slope. So if you want to flip the slope direction, it's not actually going to flip the direction, but it's going to still keep the same hinge on the slope, but you can actually invert the slope really easily this way. So for example, I have this here, I want to copy, and then make it match with the ceiling. So this makes it very easy if you want to, let's say, match the floor with the ceiling. So right now we have like a perfect symmetry there in terms of the slope angles. Or you want to do something like this, and let's say I want to create an inverse of this thing that's there, and just flip and copy the slope value around. There we go. And around it. As you can see, we created really easily with low effort. We kind of created this thing here that goes around. So you can really easily create like these starts of slopes or something similar. So of course you want to copy this from the ceiling if you painstakingly do the ceiling perfectly, and then you can just copy it to the ground like one slope by one. And of course you can further adjust by pressing Control and using the mouse to move around it, and then make the sloping perfect. And then you can just apply the same to the ceiling, because the slopes are always going to match no matter how you do it. The values themselves just need to be flipped for it to work. There we go. As you can see, that fixed the seams very easily for both the ground. Then we have paste shape. It's also extremely useful, especially for lighting effects. So I decide I want to make this a brighter light. I take it to the clipboard, and then Control Y is going to allow me to paste the shape around. So easily make something brighter or less bright with the pasting that applies to only to the shade. There you go. Get the idea. And then there's the light preview. So normally in game, let's take a different map. Normally in game you have the light effect, but there's also a way to toggle the lights. So you press Control, Shift, and X, and this will toggle all the lights in the map that you have enabled or exist. So you literally turn them the other way around. This is not gonna like preview one light at a time or anything, but this way you can kind of get an idea what the final product will look like when you flip the lights. Let's try to again here, and let's try to get to the. It's very hard to do. So if I flip the lights, you can see that it lights up the bathroom. I can kind of preview how it will look like when the door is open. Makes it very easy to prototype lights. And of course the light switch as well applies, so you need to take into account that this only gets brighter even though the door is not lighting there, but that's because it's a light switch is also also applying its light to the room when I'm previewing. There's a way, if you have something, let's say you want to raise this one a tiny bit, and then you want the Z value pasted, you can use Control Shift and W and point at the ground, and that will paste the height what you had in the clipboard. And since the height is taken from the hinge is down there, it's very easy to copy paste it around for some just like slopes and such. Very, very useful feature. So this way. For example, if you have explosions, there is something called Z noise, which is useful for explosion sprites. So let's say we have many explosions, but let's take the boss map for example, and select all these sprites here. Let's put them a little bit up, and if you want a little bit difference here, that noise, Control Shift, and this will kind of jitter the sprites around up and down, and this will give you a bit more volume at the Z level, and this can be useful in some instances. A little bit of life, and then you can just kind of put them inside the ground, and I believe you just need to kind of move them around once, and should reset the Zs so they won't go inside. But of course it won't work in this case because I have a lot of effects or offsets from before. So just hide that stupid text to hide, and then there's a extremely useful function. Normally in Duke 3D, whenever you use the respawn sprite, you had to basically know what you were doing, and you had to know the values by heart. But for example, if I have 12096, I have the regular enemy here. Oh, by the way, you can press Alt-C on a lot of sprites to sort of auto-correct them. It corrects the size and corrects the palettes and so on. In this case, we have this enemy here, so it's useful. Press Alt-C. So let's say we adjust the height tag, which is 55, low tag something, and X velocity, I don't know, something. You can press Control Alt, and then you press Q, and this will transform the enemy to a respawn sprite. Now it tells me that it's a cultist, appears on hard mode, has a locator tag 55, and belongs to squad number 5847. 5487, yeah. And then you just give it a low tag, which is 10, and after that you just press a button 10 and poof, this happens. So this is a very easy way to transform between. You can kind of plan the encounter already. So if I, let's say, have these enemies here, so here you can tell it's going to turn this. So these are the guys that enter the room when you first piss off and enter the area. So you can kind of see that, okay, here's the enemy, and you can check the enemy and you can check its locator, waypoints, and so on. And when you're down, you can just transform it back. Makes it much more easier to see visually what's going on. And this also works if you press skill preview. It will also transform all the respawn sprites to an enemy, so it's much easier to know what's happening. So hardcore, here you can see all the enemies that are visible in hardcore. The respawn sprites do not animate, they don't turn around, so you'll have to know. Good thing to know. And also, if you have an enemy, you can press Ctrl-Alt-W, which will cycle through all the skills. Extremely useful function. So normal, hard, hardcore, and they're pretty self-explanatory. Whatever is hardcore is gonna, of course, appear only in hardcore. If you have a sprite that is a respawn sprite, using the legacy respawn sprite, you can press Ctrl, Alt, and Q, and it will upgrade the sprite to a respawn 2 sprite. And after that, you can use the respawn 2 to do whatever. But this is a easy way to upgrade legacy maps to have or legacy sprites that you may have inserted to the new format. And there's also slow raise, so if we use Shift and U, you can slowly raise and J, rise and lower the sectors, a very useful function as well. If you want, you can round to the closest Z by pressing Alt and U, and this will round to the closest 1024 units, or you can do J, which is closest 128 units. This is useful if you start going like this and you want to adjust to a sane value, because these are very, very hard to align and get perfect. As you can see, the floor rise lowering on the top, the values don't really match that well. And I think that is most of the things I have to specify. And of course there's Control W that we kind of looked at. So we can force, normally if we go underwater, it will of course show like this, but I have no way, so you kind of have to do the mud palette manually. So this forces different palettes that we have for underwater. So 5 to force mud, or force nukage, or just do regular. And the skill preview can also be adjusted here, but that's not working. So for some reason it's showing the thing there, even though it doesn't really work. Then there's useful function, delta display. So if I want to have, let's say, this is, like I said, this is forcing, so I'm just going to cycle through these. So if you want to see the difference, the values between this and this, when it's on, it's going to show at the bottom 3072. I want to see the difference between, let's say, the distance that the door has to travel. So I just take a sampling there and take a sampling there, and 25600. There we go. This is a useful function if you need to specify units manually for heights or such. And lockstep for Find Z. This is where we just had the Shift U and J, but this one makes it much slower. So it's kind of like working in a lockstep, so you can actually tune in the units much easier, but it makes it even more horribly slow to work with. As you can see, it's gonna take ages, because there is quite a bit of Z precision that normally you won't really get to utilize in the engine. There's also one function, well, you can, there's like some added features, like you can see here what the song list is, for example, but there's like the light effects. Let me try to find the light effects. There's also a way to apply one sprite at a time when it comes to light effects, and I think it was Control Shift. Shade has to be a stamped EM. So you can basically use a sprite as a stamp and multiple times get it done. You can also, I think it was Alt X. There is also a way to, yeah, let there be light. There we go. So this way you can toggle a single light at a time without toggling everything. This will be permanent. So if you, for example, for some reason want to change, let's say I want this to be actually fully lit up when I start the map. So I just change this and it will change the state to be fully lit, and then you can just toggle the sprite and it will reverse the state. So this is a really easy way to reverse the states in case you want it to start the wrong way around. So we have a door here that opens, and if, for example, I want this to be lit before the door opens, then you can use that. Currently it doesn't apply the palette because the internal arrays store the palette. So if I do it this way, it's just going to lose the value itself. So yeah, you'll just have to experiment with it a little bit for some limited use cases. But that's pretty much most of the things, and the random generator was explained on the explosion video I did. So that's it for now. Water, thirsty. Anyway, if there's any questions, just fire them my way and help just catch voices. Discord, and I'll happily answer your questions that you might have. Bye-bye.